The Normans are building these massive castles to express their dominance. But at the same time, who's in control in London? It's the Anglo-Saxons. They're in their leadership positions. There are no Normans in the city. Even the Tower of London that William builds is on the very edge of the city walls. What happens next is a complete reversal of the power relationship.
So in a move that's widely seen as a precursor to the Magna Carta, Henry issues the Charter of Liberties, also known as the Coronation Charter. In exchange for recognition and support from the barons and from the church, he puts down on paper specific powers that he's willing to give up in exchange for a steady flow of revenues or the twice annual receipt of taxes in the form of the Exchequer, or the location of the office of the Councillor of the Exchequer. Now we're seeing charters where the Normans are seeking the support of the Anglo-Saxons. They're not just occupiers. It's not the Duke of Normandy occupying England anymore. It's the King of England. This charter enables the aldermen of London to select their own sheriff. The sheriff is still going to act on behalf of the king. He's going to collect taxes, but he will be chosen by the aldermen, and they're going to pay an incremental tribute to maintain this right. The charter also codifies the practice of folk moot. It's not treasonous for Londoners to congregate on their own to discuss and decide upon civic affairs. There are also several important provisions pertaining to war and billeting. Everyone within London is now exempt completely from military service. Likewise, they can no longer be compelled to provide quartering for troops or any representatives of the crown. The House of Plantagenet begins with Henry II. He's the grandson of Henry I. He's not interested in extending any liberties to London or anywhere else. In fact, he views the city as the most likely seat of resistance to his rule. His most lasting contribution is the construction of Tower Bridge, which is completed after his death. But his reign is probably most noted for the Becket controversy, in which he instills his own crony, Thomas of Becket, as the Archbishop of Canterbury, only to have him murdered years later. His very public penance to Rome included the commitment of the knights to crusade, including his own son, Richard the Lionheart.
No. Seriously, no. Did you forget who we're dealing with? We're dealing with the guy who murders the 12-year-old nephew, who marries the 13-year-old, who puts the guy's wife and son in a cell to starve to death. This is John. He's not a nice guy. He's not interested in extending any freedoms or liberties.
His jealousy, sensitivity to criticism, his desire for revenge, and his delight at humbling his barons and peers of the realm. Many people see King John as a loser. He lost Normandy, he lost his argument with the Pope.
John is always looking for ways to raise money to fund his lavish lifestyle. So he goes back to London and demands 3,000 marks to issue a charter called Notification of Confirmation of Liberties to the Men of London.
This charter does actually mention the mayor specifically, which is a first.
John spent the last year of his life seeking to undo the provisions of the Magna Carta. After his death in 1216, his son, Henry III, assumed the throne at age 9. A regency government is formed, and the Magna Carta is sealed again. In 1297, Edward I seals what we now know as the final version of the Magna Carta. And like his ancestors, he wants money to defend Gascony from the French. And like their ancestors, the barons want concessions for the money they're providing. This time, the document is recorded in the Statuta book. It's a statute, it's recorded law. A body recognizable as Parliament is formed.